to the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel. My name's FPL Nacho and this is the Game Week 10 live stream. Hope you guys are doing well. It is a Friday evening, of course. We have a Saturday deadline, which is delightful to think about. Don't have to panic this evening, which is always great news. And just a reminder that it is a 1:30 UK time deadline on the Saturday. So we actually get our mornings back if you are in the UK. And of course, wherever you are in the world, if you are tuning in, let me know what time that will be for you on Saturday. But just a quick reminder that it is 1:30 UK time, that deadline. So this video, guys, we are going to be discussing a lot of hot topics and, of course, opening the floor to you guys for a Q&A for any questions that you have. So just to round off what we'll be covering, Mitrovic, what to do with Mitrovic right now. In my team reveal, I am currently a Mitrovic owner, so I'm going to tell you exactly what my plans are and what I think the long-term plans should be for Mitrovic, obviously considering the fixture rotation and the World Cup in Game Week 16, of course. Then we're going to be looking at mid-price midfielders to consider. I think right now the narrative in FPL is for us to slightly move away from the premium midfielders and invest elsewhere in our teams, and I think the mid-price midfielders are offering great value. Going to be discussing the best options there. We're then going to be looking at the fixtures coming up, and then of course the projected points for Game Week 10. Just if you guys are in the market for some players, these are going to be the top players in each position for you to buy. So first and foremost, guys, if you are new around here, make sure you do hit that subscribe button so you are, of course, subscribed to the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel. And if you are enjoying the stream, make sure you do drop a like just so we know that it is enjoyable watching for you guys. We always try and go for 50 likes. So if we can get anywhere near that once again, guys, that'll be massively appreciated. And similar to all of this, guys, if we can, throughout the live stream, drop any questions that you have. I will cover the hot topics and then dip into some of the questions and keep that sort of format going. And at the end of the live stream, we will basically open it out to a full-blown Q&A for any further questions that haven't been addressed in this live stream. So hopefully that just gives you a little bit of clarity on what direction we're going with this live stream. So let's crack on with my team reveal, guys, right now. Exactly what I'm planning to do in Game Week 10. Just a quick reminder that my position right now in FPL has been a little bit difficult. I was a Salah captainer in Game Week 9, but I did wildcard. And obviously that was a monstrous red arrow. So we're going to be looking at that team off the back of that. And of course my plans go forward. So let's get into it. So guys, this is how my team is looking going into Game Week 10. I do apologise for my rudeness here, not saying hi to the guys in the chat. Cheekster, hope you're doing well, ever present on this live stream. Massively appreciate you tuning in. And I also see Tom, obviously, in the chat. Hope you're doing well, mate. And Douglas, hope you're doing well. Again, make sure you're dropping your questions throughout the live stream in the chat. It'd be great to see who is online. So, as I mentioned, guys, a quick update on my position right now. Wildcarded in Game Week 9 and brought in so many players I am delighted to have in my team. But, oh boy, did Captain in Salah ruin my game week monstrously. Honestly, going for Salah over Haaland basically quadrupled my rank. I was 200k going into Game Week 9. And then before the Leicester game, I was 1.2 million in the world. Now, if it wasn't for Ward and that 8-point haul, which forever will go down in the history books for me, and Maddison's monstrous haul as well, it would have been around 1 million rank, which basically would have been 5 times my rank, going obviously in the wrong direction there. Leicester boys absolutely saved me, so I'm right now a Leicester fan, clearly. But basically with that situation there is I'm currently around 470,000 in the world. And again, just to touch on obviously ranks right now, because a lot of people did get, you know, quite badly hit and others done fantastic in Game Week 9. Remember, there's so much of the season still to contend with right now. I finished 270th in the world last season and I was hovering around the hundreds of thousands for a lot of the season in majority of like the first half. Remember, we have so much coming up in the season with the blanks, the double game weeks, so much opportunities for us to deploy our chips and really make back any sort of ground that we lost in the early part of the season. So honestly, guys, do not get too caught up in your rank right now if you are in a bad place. Keep making those decisions that you are happy with, because the big thing about right now in FPL, and it's always been the case, is this. You can't control the outcomes. So as long as the decisions that you're making before that deadline you are happy with, it shouldn't change after the deadline. If you were happy with your decisions before the deadline, they should remain the same. And the outcome is a completely separate thing. You cannot control what those guys on the pitch are doing at all. Otherwise, I would be making sure Salah scores every single time he has a shot. So remember, try and disassociate yourself from the outcome that happens and just keep making good decisions with your team. So this is how my team is looking, guys. We need to come to Mitrovic because, of course, that is why a lot of you are on this stream right now. And, of course, as a Mitrovic owner right now, I can completely kind of resonate with you guys and give you an honest answer here. So just an update on the press conference from Marco Silva. It was quite a good press conference, thankfully. We didn't have a classic, I'm trying to think of an example of a team, maybe like a Klopp or somebody who just gives really kind of vague answers. We had decent clarity, to be fair. Mitrovic is back in light training, which we know, and he is potentially available for the West Ham game. Now, that is quite vague there, but what is very, very good news is that Marco Silva has said that he would definitely be available for the Bournemouth game. So the way I'm reading that right now, and apologies, the Bournemouth game is in game week 11. So the way I'm reading that right now is basically the situation is Mitrovic is going to be touch and go for the West Ham game, and if he doesn't pass fit for that game, then the additional week's rest is going to make him definitely available for that Bournemouth game. So what do you do with Mitrovic right now? I think there is going to be a lot of uncertainty right now in the community about getting him straight out of the team, bringing in a player that is going to be playing this game week with a favourable fixture. For example, somebody like Callum Wilson of Newcastle. And that is going to be dictated on how strong your squad depth is. So you can see my team on the screen right now. Because I wildcarded, the depth of my team is actually quite good. If Mitrovic wasn't to start, and it is worth noting that I will be starting Mitrovic in game week 10, then I have Mark Gay to come off the bench and replace him to effectively put me in a 4-4-2 formation. Now, I completely empathise that there are going to be managers out there that might have a similar starting 11 to me, but then might have all substitutes on the bench that don't play for their respective teams. And then, of course, we are getting into a sticky situation. So my first and foremost decision on Mitrovic is holding him. I personally think that is the right move to make over the longer term. Just to give you a roundup on what the Mitrovic fixtures are coming up. Let's say he does miss the West Ham away fixture. Game week 11, where, as I said, based on Marco Silva's press conference, Mitrovic will definitely be available for Bournemouth at home, Villa at home, Leeds away, and then Everton at home. Now, it's worth noting that I actually think they're a little bit more difficult than what they seem on paper. I've seen a better defensive unit of Leeds and Everton this season as opposed to last season, but I still think they are fantastic fixtures for Mitrovic owners. And I really do foresee a situation where you're probably going to be selling Mitrovic, maybe downgraded him or doing a sideways move. And then looking back in game week 11 when you can't get back to him thinking, I should have held him for Bournemouth at home and gave that patience on him that, to be fair, I think he does deserve. He's been in good form so far this season. And I think the exit point for Mitrovic is going to be in game week 15 with a away fixture against Man City and a home fixture against Man United. So for me, right now, it is holding Mitrovic up until game week 11 where we hope he will be available for that home fixture against Bournemouth. Now, if you're in a situation right now where your bench is absolutely horrendous and you're effectively going to play with 10 players if Mitrovic doesn't feature, then of course I do think there is going to be potential for and an argument for you to sell Mitrovic. But my question to you would be, maybe could you sell one of your bench fodders if you have a player that isn't getting game time and maybe do a sideways move just to improve the depth of your squad? For example, you could be sat there with a Fofana at Chelsea and knowing that he's going to be out for a month, do an easy sideways move to Mark Gay of Crystal Palace and just play Gay for this game week and bench Mitrovic as an auto sub if that was to happen. My thoughts right now is to start Mitrovic either way because I think he either plays or he gets 0 minutes. That's the way I am approaching it. But of course, let me know in the chat, guys, what your thoughts are with the Mitrovic situation right now. As for the rest of the team, as I said, I am naturally very happy with my team because I wildcarded and I brought in these players knowing that I want to have them long term. I'm conscious of the potential rumours of Gaita getting rotated at some point this season, but until that actually materialises, I'm not going to sweat about it too much. The back three I am partially happy with. I think the obvious one is going to be Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, I saw positive things in the Champions League game against Rangers, but again, it was only Rangers. We saw Liverpool do this against Ajax, put in a fantastic Champions League performance, and then concede 3 goals against Brighton at home. So it could be a bit of a false dawn, and of course I am conscious that Rangers, from an attacking perspective, aren't going to be posing the sort of problems that Arsenal are going to pose. But with Trent Alexander-Arnold and Liverpool against Rangers, they effectively went to almost like a 4-4-2. I don't think it essentially was a 4-4-2 all the time, but they definitely put more of an emphasis on actually supporting the defenders. So bringing in Salah, bringing in Luis Diaz, and almost playing a flat 4 in defensive phases just to kind of help the fullbacks out. And I think that really did help them in that Champions League fixture. So I think that with Trent, the fixtures coming up, I absolutely agree, are not really clean sheet fixtures, away against Arsenal and then home against Man City. But if you are in a position where you did wildcard and you are looking beyond game week 13, game week 12, where they have West Ham at home and then really favourable fixtures up until the World Cup, I think you just sit on Trent Alexander-Arnold and hope that we do see a little bit more of a solid Liverpool team going into the Arsenal fixture. If you are in a situation right now where you are looking to sell Trent Alexander-Arnold and you're in a similar situation to me, that I think Trippier is going to be the right move for you to go for. Now, it's worth noting with Trippier that he does have mixed fixtures coming up, and the same applies to Callum Wilson if you were looking to bring him in as a potential alternative to Mitrovic. But with Trippier's fixtures coming up, he has Brentford at home, United away, Everton at home, and then Spurs away. So the fixtures kind of alternate each and every game week, but the thing that I really like about Trippier is such a well-rounded asset. He offers attacking output, obviously 1 goal, 1 assist so far this season, but also he's been in and amongst the bonus points so far. 5 bonus points for defenders is right up there with some of the best. So I really like Trippier as an alternative to Trent if your faith has gone with the Liverpool assets. Rest of the team for me, absolutely delighted with. I know there is a lot of Salah haters out there right now, and it's worth mentioning that based on our projected points, and I will come to them later on, KDB is higher than Mo Salah naturally for game week 10 because of his home fixture against Southampton and of course getting completely rested in the Champions League game. But the way I sometimes do approach games in fantasy football is looking at what actually the opponent, the opposition, is going to be up against. And when I do think about Mo Salah up against a Zinchenko at Arsenal and Mo Salah against potentially a Gomez at Man City or maybe an Ake or Cancelo deployed at left back, I don't necessarily think in a 1v1 situation we are seeing a really difficult position for Mo Salah to be in. I've seen over the seasons Mo Salah twist up Cancelo in games, and that against Zinchenko I do think is a possibility as well. Do I think Liverpool will get a positive result in these games is a different story, but from an individual note, do I think Mo Salah could deliver in those next 2 fixtures? I do. And after that, we know that his fixtures are fantastic up until the World Cup. So yes, I could be a delusional, FPL manager, and I could be holding on to false hope for Mo Salah, but I still think his underlying stats still suggest that there is an FPL player in there. Just looking at the expected goals for midfielders, and this is all midfielders, Mo Salah is still second best at 3.19, and his expected assists are 4th best of all midfielders at 2.03. So right now, the narrative right now is that Mo Salah is a dead player, he's doing absolutely nothing in the game, he's terrible, sell him with everything you have. But the underlying stats that I am reading here is a Mo Salah that, from a finishing perspective, really isn't at the races. But in terms of a chance creation, in terms of a opportunity, sort of goal scoring, I'm seeing good things. So I'm going to stick with Mo Salah. Let me know what your thoughts are in the chat, guys, with Mo Salah. Are you looking to sell him? Are you completely off the boat with Mo Salah? For me, I'm sticking with him. I think that he still is a good option up until the World Cup. That isn't to say that KDB won't outscore him in this game week. So I'm going to quickly dip into some of the questions in the chat here, because I see there's quite a few. And then we are going to come into a midfielder comparison. I know I didn't touch on captaincy, but there is no point in this discussion right now. It is Haaland, and that is the end of it. This is a guy who didn't captain Haaland in game week 9, and I'm just recovering from the wounds. My advice is don't try and be brave. Go for Haaland. Based on the live teams in the game, 90% of managers own Haaland. So while you go onto the FPL site and it tells you about 81, obviously there's a lot of teams out there that have basically just stopped playing fantasy football. And based on live teams, and all this information is taken from Fantasy Football Fix, it is 90% of managers that own Haaland. And obviously, captaincy at home to Southampton, it is going to be ridiculous. So just don't do it, guys. Don't try and be brave or a hero and go against Haaland, because it just isn't worth it right now at this stage in the season. So Mads is saying, good evening from Norway. Mads, I hope you're doing well. Thank you for tuning in. Wildcard in Game Week 9. Got Salah and Trent, just 0.1 in the bank. Need to free up funds for Game Week 13 onwards. Any thoughts on TAA down to Trippier or Chilwell in that regard? Yeah, so as I touched on there, Mads, Trippier would be my go-to if you are really looking to free up funds. And again, this is all about how you view Liverpool as a team. I'm personally still happy to stick with them, but I understand that a lot of managers have given up faith in Liverpool. And if that is the situation, then Trent is a very easy cash cow for your team. So downgrading Trippier probably would be the move that I'd recommend. I think Trippier is a fantastic FPL option, and the injury to Fofana I think does enhance Chilwell's minutes. But speaking as a Chelsea fan, I still don't really know what the back three or the back four is going to be over the coming game weeks. I know Cucurella is a Graham Potter fan. Apologies, the way around. Graham Potter is a fan of Cucurella. Could we see a back three of Cucurella, Thiago Silva and Chalobah? We could potentially see Koulibaly come in to operate off the left-hand side of the back three and Chalobah off the right, which means that Cucurella could be deployed as a left wing back. Now, Chilwell, I do think, will get minutes from time to time, and he could very well be the number one. But I just think there's enough risk right now with Chilwell pick to not go with him and really just focus your attention on Reece James if you still don't own him. And in regards to... no, I think I've covered that. I think I've covered it. Sorry, I just thought it was more there. James Lee, does Vardy start, in your opinion, this week? James, I think there's enough of a reason to worry about Vardy to not consider him as an FPL option. I think Daka is doing well in the game time that he is having in a Leicester shirt. So for me, I still think Vardy gets plenty of game time in this Leicester team, but not enough guarantee on it to make him an FPL option. And Nick has put in quite possibly the most accurate FPL rules I've ever seen this season in. Rule number one, don't not. So rule number one is captain Haaland, and rule number two is don't sell Haaland. And I can absolutely agree with that one there. You just cannot really deny that at all. Okay, cover up a few more here. Whom should I sell? Trippier or Pope? I wouldn't sell either for this game week in isolation. It's a fantastic, I wouldn't say a fantastic, but it's a good game week at home against Brentford, a team that don't necessarily travel well on the road. So no, I wouldn't be looking to sell either of those players. My recommendation to you would be to roll your free transfer if you can. Cheeky saying, roll my free transfer, so I have 2 free transfers using game week 11. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic move. And Douglas saying, shall I take out Gordon? So Gordon's been a player that we haven't really been discussing much in FPL. He was a little bit of a hot topic 3 or 4 game weeks ago, I believe. But right now, not really someone that we are discussing. Now, just to remind myself on the Everton fixtures coming up, just so I got clarification. Because unfortunately, guys, although I know a little bit of FPL, I just don't really have all the knowledge, unfortunately. So Gordon coming up, Man United at home, Spurs away, and then they come into a really good run up until the World Cup. So I think Gordon, I think he's a luxury sell. I think you still can play him. I know he wasn't starting in game week 9, but I do believe that was just coming back from like an illness or a slight knock. So I think it's a luxury move for you to sell him. If you do sell him, then the difficulty here is what midfielder is available to you. I will come back to you on that one because unfortunately off the top of my head, I don't really know what direction I would go in. I think Xhaka could be in the conversation, but he blanks in game week 12. So that kind of makes him a no-brainer not to go there. I think Almiron at Newcastle, if you want to be brave, but Isaac could take minutes away from him. And then you go to maybe someone like an Eze, who's potentially an alternative to Gordon. But realistically, are we going to trust Eze as an FPL asset? Probably not. So I think holding Gordon's probably the route that I would go for, even though the fixtures are tough coming up. And Josh is saying, is Martial a good 1 week replacement for Mitrovic? I think Martial could be a good rotate. Let me start again. I do think Martial could be a good alternative to Mitrovic. But I think we're going to come back to the exact same situation where Martial could do fantastic against Everton, potentially away. Firstly, we don't even know if he's going to start. Then after that, Man United are at home against a very tough Newcastle team, whereas Mitrovic will be at home to Bournemouth. And then the week after that, Martial will play Spurs, when you're going to have Mitrovic up against Aston Villa. So don't really look at it as a 1 week punt, I wouldn't say, unless you're wildcarding the week after. You need to look at it over the span of multiple game weeks. And looking at Martial over this period, I don't think he is the right move for you to make, because then he has Chelsea afterwards away. My recommendation would be, if you're looking to bring in Martial, game week 14 to 16 is probably the entry point I would go for. It gives us 4 game weeks to understand whether he is definitely Erik ten Hag's number one man down the middle. And secondly, is Martial actually got the legs to do 90 minutes week in, week out? He's only done 75 minutes of Premier League football. So to me, that just isn't enough right now to confidently sell someone like Mitrovic, who I know is going to play every single minute when he is available, to someone like Martial. Just feels like a little bit of a punt right now. Dan Bennett, I hope you're doing well, buddy. Obviously, Dan Bennett, one of the top FPL managers. Team's looking good, thank you, mate. And yeah, Nick made a great point here about Ten Hag saying that Martial's minutes will get managed, so it is worth noting that. And Dan's got himself a very, very easy move this week of Bailey to Zaha, which is just, sometimes in fantasy football, when there is such an obvious move available to you, it is just one of the best feelings ever in fantasy, because you just don't have to panic about anything else. You know that Bailey realistically isn't an optimal FPL pick. You can bring in someone like Zaha, who we know is just one of the popular picks, and know that that move, however it works out in the coming game weeks, was the right move for you to go for. Okay, guys, so I see we still got plenty of chat in the conversation. A lot of conversation going on in the chat. I can't get my words out today at all. So this is how my team's looking, guys. We've covered this one off. Let's move into mid-price midfielders that we should be considering over the coming game weeks. I think there's a few here that we need to get on our radar. Okay, here. So shout out to Finn for the graphics, by the way. Absolute joke. He's on fire right now. So mid-price midfielders as we speak. I think these 5 here are probably the ones that I would be thinking are in the discussion right now. In particular, Maddison, Zaha and Foden. I think they really are kind of like the spice of the month right now. In particular, Maddison and Zaha, because a lot of managers have wildcarded in game week 8 or game week 9. And that was a brilliant entry point for both of those FPL options. So you can see on screen here, first 3 lines there are based on the stats per 90 minutes. So we have the expected FPL points, expected goals and shots. And these are all per 90 minutes. Then we have the fixture for game week 10, the predicted points for game week 10, and the bottom row there is the next 5 games for predicted points. So you can see that in green as well. Basically, that highlights the player that has the best stat in each row. So first up, we can see in the expected FPL points department, Zaha is leading the way. Now, it's very, very close between both Zaha and Phil Foden, but really highlights how great Wilfried Zaha has been so far this season from both a creative perspective and a goal scoring perspective as well. Him being the talisman in the Crystal Palace team, which has basically been the same like this for the past 5 or 6 seasons. Him having penalties is just another string to his bow now that Milejevic is gone, thank God. We now got Wilfried Zaha on penalties. And we know as well, with the upcoming fixtures for Wilfried Zaha being fantastic between now and the World Cup, we could see a fantastic period for Zaha. And I think he's a fantastic... How many times am I saying fantastic? It's a great entry point to bring in Wilfried Zaha into your teams. And just those expected FPL points are so good to see for somebody of that price range right now, being the cheapest of the bunch. It's worth noting, Zaha at 7.3, I believe. The rest are at 8.1 million. So you are saving yourself about 0.8 million if you were to go down the Zaha route. Looking at the other players quickly here, Bowen is quite considerably the worst here, but we have to remember that both West Ham and Bowen have had a really tough start to the season. We've seen the best of Bowen in the last 2 game weeks, where his underlying stats have really started to creep up back to the levels that we were expecting last season. So looking at Bowen there, it hasn't been the best right now, but I think with the fixtures turning, the tough start that West Ham had, I am anticipating those expected points to slowly increase over the coming game weeks. But look, we can't really look too far away from the big boys in the big teams, and that's Phil Foden and Diaz. Now, when we are considering players, and it goes for midfielders, I think it is really important to remember that when we are comparing players at same price points, we always want to really try and consider the teams that are creating the most opportunities. Now, just to give you kind of like an idea on how the teams are placed right now for expected goals, Man City are absolutely dominating in this department right now. 18.59 expected goals so far this season. And it's worth noting that they've played 8 games. Liverpool, 14.02 expected goals so far this season, but they have played 1 less game. Then we look at West Ham. West Ham, 3rd worst expected goals at 7.31. Leicester, 4th worst at 7.66. And Palace, 5th worst at 7.76. Now, although the team don't necessarily have the best XG, expected goals, it doesn't mean that the player isn't a good FPL option. We see basically the Maddison, Bowen and Zaha, these are talisman players in their teams, in particular Maddison and Zaha. So although the expected goals for the team might not be anywhere near the levels of Man City and Liverpool, it does become the narrative that if they do score goals, then these players are going to be in and amongst it, because it's basically how the team is geared, is to make sure that these players are always in the action. That goes in particular for someone of Maddison. So firstly, I always want to target the players that are in the teams that are creating the most opportunities, and Man City are absolutely that team. But the one thing we do need to remember for Phil Foden is that he does blank in game week 12. Now, I think if Phil Foden didn't have a blank in game week 12, I think this conversation's over. At 8.1 million, the same price as Maddison, Bowen and Diaz, it's game over. Phil Foden is your choice, and you basically go for Phil Foden instead of Kevin De Bruyne alongside Haaland. But because of that blank game week in game week 12, I personally think that throws enough kind of uncertainty on points returns over the next 2 game weeks to think that the other options are better picks. So right now, I'm going to rule out Foden as the better FPL option just because of that blank in game week 12 if we're looking to freshly buy a player. Now, as I mentioned, looking at the expected goals, Zaha is leading the way, and Bowen and Maddison really aren't delivering in that department right now, so I want to come back to that in a minute. Now, the shots one is something that I think really is worth noting and just kind of having a few caveats on this. So, for example, you can see Maddison here has had the most shots per 90 at 3.31. Whereas when we compare that to someone of Phil Foden, he's about 1 shot per 90 less than Maddison at 2.38. But again, we need to remember a few things. First and foremost, Foden playing in a team that are creating so many chances makes me think that he is getting into better goal scoring opportunities. And that reflects that in the expected goals department and also in the shots in the box. Phil Foden, so far this season, 16 shots, 14 of those in the box, which for me is always fantastic reading. Maddison, on the other hand, 23 shots so far, 9 of those in the box. Now, we have come basically to the kind of narrative of Maddison just banging in these 30-yard worldies, which again is just going to happen because he is one of those finishers. But when we see something like this, shots per 90, 3.31 for Maddison, it looks great. But I want to be looking at the player that is getting those shots in the box and those high quality chances. And that is why Foden is still one of the best picks. And if you have him, you stick with him. But I just wanted to kind of mention that on how the narrative can change a little bit. Now, the worry for me right now is Bowen's numbers. I don't think I'll necessarily be buying Bowen fresh right now. I think everything points towards Zaha as the #1 transfer into your team if you haven't already. A fantastic home fixture against Leeds this game week. Expected goals are fantastic. Shots per 90 are really, really good. And you can see that the next 5 games, 22.3 projected points is solid reading. Now, Maddison is leading the way for next 5 projected points at 25.3. And that's because Leicester's fixtures are fantastic. And as I mentioned, although Leicester's expected goals as a team aren't necessarily that high, everything is filtered through Maddison. The creation of the team is going through him. Everything. So projected points wise, he's always in and amongst it, which means that he's right up there. So Maddison and Zaha, absolutely the 2 that you need to consider for your teams right now going forward. The thing I want to quickly touch on before we get back into the questions on the chat is, can we go for Foden instead of Kevin De Bruyne? So I've got some of the stats here just to have a bit of a comparison between a premium Man City option and a mid-price midfielder option. Now, as I said, I wouldn't necessarily be jumping to Man City assets right now just because Southampton at home is unbelievable. It's an amazing fixture. So if you just want to bring it in for that one fixture in isolation, I don't blame anybody. But it's worth mentioning that they have Liverpool in game week 11 and a blank in game week 12. So just be careful of that. That might be nothing that you're worrying about, and you can just obviously go all in on these assets. But just be cautious of those fixtures coming up. So just to read these out for Kevin De Bruyne, and remember the figures on the screen right now are the ones that I'm comparing them to. So expected FPL points is 7.11 for Kevin De Bruyne. So about 1.5 better than Foden per 90. Expected goals is 0.28 per 90 for Kevin De Bruyne. So Foden is operating a lot better in this department right now. Shots per 90, 3.22 for Kevin De Bruyne and 2.38 for Foden. So Kevin De Bruyne, higher shot volume, but the XG is with Foden. And expected assists, it's not on the screen here for Foden, but 0.65 per 90 for Kevin De Bruyne, which is ridiculous. Foden 0.18. So I think there is quite a big disparity between the two here. I still think if money's no object, Kevin De Bruyne is the route to go for. But what I'm really seeing here is expected goals for Phil Foden is looking fantastic. I think we are seeing a much more advanced Phil Foden alongside Haaland in this team. And I really do think that we are seeing this sort of Man City side where we're getting identities of these sort of players here right now. And Kevin De Bruyne is always going to be that deep line playmaker, putting in those trademark balls off the right, and Grealish being a bit more of a ball carrier. And we're seeing Haaland and Foden really getting in and amongst it for touches in the kind of box, really. Now, I haven't actually looked at this, so this could be really embarrassing if this actually doesn't reflect it in the underlying stats. So I just wanted to look at like the touches in the opposition box, and we can see here that Phil Foden has currently got 40 touches in the opposition box. Now, if we were to compare that to somebody of, for example, Kevin De Bruyne, then I've got to scroll a long way for me to be able to find him. And he actually is coming out as only 22 touches in the opposition box. So again, read into that what you will, but I want to see my player in and around the box. And seeing Phil Foden have, nearly 20 more touches in the box so far this season highlights to me that he is going to be a bit more of a goal scorer in this Man City team, and making me think, okay, Kevin De Bruyne is going to continue to feed the machine that is Haaland. But if we could get Phil Foden continually being, that kind of big man, little man sort of front line, then we could see really big returns for Foden, and he might eventually actually deliver as an FPL option, whereas over past seasons, he's been really, really underwhelming. So the answer to that is yes, I do think Foden can be an alternative to Kevin De Bruyne as an FPL option. Now, the other one is going to be Diaz. Now, I'm not recommending anybody right now to bring in Luis Diaz into their teams because similar to Man City, the fixtures coming up aren't necessarily the best. They have Arsenal away and then Man City, and then we're going to be looking to bring him in game week 12 with their fixture against West Ham. And I know Tom will be watching right now, so apologies, Tom, but, West Ham could be a good fixture. I'm not going to destroy him too much because West Ham, it's worth noting, defensively have been actually quite good. They're up there in about top 6 for expected goals against. But game week 12 onwards for Liverpool is West Ham at home, Forest away, Leeds at home, Spurs away, Southampton at home. Brilliant fixtures for offensive Liverpool assets. So same again for Diaz versus Mo Salah. Mo Salah's expected per 90 is 6.2. Diaz's 5.26. So Salah kind of about 1 per 90 there, better off in expected FPL points. Expected goals, 0.46 for Mo Salah per 90, 0.36 for Diaz. So Diaz keeping up okay with Mo Salah there. And the shots, 3.14 for Salah, 2.51 for Diaz. So again, very, very close between the two there. And looking at the expected assists as well, 0.29 per 90 for Salah, 0.14 for Diaz. So the way I'm reading that right now is very similar to the Foden De Bruyne department. You pay for what you get. The underlying stats are better in Mo Salah's department here. But I think there is a narrative potentially to say that Diaz could be an alternative to Salah in the coming game weeks. I just think for me right now, I feel a bit more confident going for Mo Salah over Diaz, and I feel more confident that Foden can deliver because Kevin De Bruyne's goal scoring isn't necessarily at the same level as what Mo Salah's is historically. So I think what we could see is Kevin De Bruyne picking up hauls, plenty of assists, I think is going to be the narrative here. But I just think Salah will hit a run of games where he might score 8 in 5, for example. I don't see Kevin De Bruyne being capable of that. Whereas what I'm reading with the numbers of Foden here is that he could be the goal scorer of this team outside of Haaland. So the way I'm viewing it is Foden over KDB, but although the numbers are quite close between Salah and Diaz, I think Salah over Diaz, even though there is a saving in the money there. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, guys. And again, I appreciate that was quite a long-winded discussion on the mid-price midfielders, but I felt it was needed because I think there is going to be a big discussion for us to have whether we go all in on 8 million midfielders or we keep and maintain a premium midfielder in the side. Right. Let's get through some of this because I have been chatting for a while on this section and I've ignored the chat for a while. So, Nuclear Atom's doing very well, mate. Hope you're doing well. Basil's saying, I've taken 2 hits, transferred out Salah, Andreas and Longstaff, transferred in Foden, Bowen and Trossard, and I have Maddison and Zaha. Was that a good move? Look, as I said, I'm a Salah fan, so I'm not necessarily going to be agreeing with the decisions that you made. But the 3 players that you're bringing in of Foden, Bowen and Trossard brings back the narrative that maybe a lot of managers are looking to sell their premium and go for multiple mid-price midfielders. And I think you've got a great crop of those there. So yes, I don't mind the move. But again, I just think Mo Salah, I'm just a very, very biased fan and lover of him. Henry saying Guy or Castagna for the next 3. Well, naturally, I'm going to say Castagna is the better option because the fixtures are good and the attacking potential is there. But Guy at 4.3 million, I think, is a great entry point if we don't have the Crystal Palace coverage right now. So I think Castagna for the FPL ceiling, Guy just for kind of like the guaranteed minutes in this team. Nuclear Atoms, who should I play instead of Mitrovic? Nico, Guy, or Solanke? Okay, that's a really good point. Now, we don't actually have those projected points on our screen for us to show because they're not really in the top 10, unfortunately. So what I can do is read out the projected points for those 3 players to give you a bit of an idea on exactly what our algorithm is saying. Now, it's worth noting that if I was to play one of those 3, I probably would go for Dominic Solanke. I think it's just one of those where it's basically, if you brought in Solanke, I think in the fixtures, like at home against Southampton, I think you just got to play him. And Ndidi's been ruled out, which is going to hinder Leicester from a defensive perspective. And I think realistically, if you brought Solanke into your team, you just start him in a game against Leicester. I know they kept a clean sheet, but yeah, I just think that is probably the route that I would go for. Now, Solanke in game week 10 is projected to score 3.5. Williams is projected to score 2.3. And Guy is projected to score 3.7. So Guy is projected to do better than Solanke, but I personally would probably upside chase and go for the Solanke pick. Would you sell Sterling for Bowen? Chinesa, I think there is definitely an argument for that. I think Sterling's been looking good in the Chelsea team, even though he hasn't been necessarily like really exploding as an FPL option. It's all about your squad structure. What does that 2 million saving do, and where else can you invest that in your team? Otherwise, I wouldn't rush to do it. But if you said to me, Sterling or Bowen this week, I think it's incredibly close between the two because Wolves without a manager could be there for the taking for Chelsea. But of course, Bowen at home against a Fulham team, I think is going to be equally a fantastic turn. So I think it's a luxury move for you this week. Henry saying, can you justify a Foden cap was rested completely? Henry, I just don't think we can go for a Foden cap to see. I think Haaland, and that is it really, unfortunately. Run deep. I have Jesus up front for this week. Should I keep or sell to someone like Martial? No, I would keep Jesus. It's worth noting he is on 4 yellow cards. So there might be a time where he is going to pick up that 5th and he will be suspended for the following game week. But right now, the form that Arsenal are in, I believe they're the 2nd best for expected goals so far this season as a team. Against a Liverpool team who are struggling defensively right now. Although, as I mentioned earlier in the stream, I do anticipate to see a bit more of a defensive, resolute Liverpool team after what we saw in the Champions League with their formation change. I do think Jesus is still a hold. I'm seeing too many good things right now from him to suggest you sell him. Alex, thoughts on Kepa? Kepa could be incredibly interesting because I said this the minute Graham Potter come in. Kepa is a Graham Potter goalkeeper. From a playing perspective, Graham Potter likes his goalkeepers to be able to distribute, similar to how all managers are starting to be right now in football. Mendy is very, 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 very dodgy with his feet, although a good shot stopper. Could we see Kepa maintain his position right now? I think there's still enough of uncertainty not to go for Kepa, but if we see another game week or 2 more game weeks, and I think we need to say to ourselves, Kepa is the number 1 right now, and until he makes a mistake, which is common in all teams that have 2 good goalkeepers, they are basically 1 mistake away from getting rotated, then we could take that punt on Kepa. Now, guys, I'm conscious I'm going through the chat right now because I've been rambling on for a long time. So I'm going to quickly pop up the next slide so you can have it on your screen. Not too much to talk about, but we can just have it on your screen while we are going through some other questions. And those are going to be the upcoming fixtures over the next 4 weeks. Now, of course, as I mentioned, game week 12 is a blank game week. If you didn't know that already, Man City versus Arsenal did get postponed. But again, looking at those attacking fixtures, Dominic Solanke, do something, please. I am begging you. It has to happen eventually. But look, Bournemouth looking good. Villa, I don't think we can go into right now, even though they look good fixtures. West Ham, if you have Bowen, you keep. Would I look to invest right now? I probably still would prioritise Zaha or Maddison. Wolves, you're mental if you're going for a Wolves asset right now. Although, Diego Costa, potentially on the radar, potentially. And Palace, again, just justifying the decision to go for Wilfried Zaha. Defensively, Leicester, as I said, if you're with Ward, what a great game week we had in game week 9. He is basically Manuel Neuer in disguise. No, but look, there could be game weeks where we could bring him back in. Maybe the Crystal Palace home game, maybe even the Wolves game in game week 13 if we really do need him in that fixture. Got Palace, second best defensive fixtures, justifies the Gay pick. West Ham, if you want to go there and you want to go for someone like a Cresswell or you want to go for someone like Zuma, I think there is justifiable fixtures for that. Fulham, can't really justify, and Chelsea creeping up there. James, obviously the automatic pick in that Chelsea defence. I wouldn't go near anybody else right now. So guys, I'll leave that fixture screen on there for you. I'm going to come back to the questions and cover those off. And then we'll come up to the last screen, which is going to be projected points for game week 10. And as well, guys, if you haven't already, make sure you do drop a like on the live stream. It is massively appreciated. I see we're on 34 likes and I see over 100 of you in the chat. If we can get to 50 likes in the next few minutes, I'm not going to give you anything, but I'm just going to show my love and affection. That is all. Right. Nigel, is James an expensive option considering Chelsea's form? Chilwell to enable upgrades elsewhere. Nigel, it's a really good point, but you only have to watch the Champions League game to see what Reece James is capable of. Graham Potter is very similar to Tuchel in that he does rely on his wing-backs to be an essential part of the way that they attack. So I think James is guaranteed game time week in, week out. I don't see him playing as a right-sided centre-back because Chelsea defensively have the numbers to do that now, I believe. Fofana's injury is a bit of a kick in the teeth, but I think Graham Potter knows Reece James is too important to put in that back three right now. I think that he is going to be the right wing-back, and we can see Chalobah play as right-sided centre-back. We could see Azpilicueta. We could even see Koulibaly come over that side. So James is the one to go for. I don't think there's any denying that. Chilwell, if you want to go early, is an option, but I think there's much more rotation risk on that side of the field. We don't know whether his optimal 2 on that side is a Cucurella left-sided centre-back, Chilwell left wing-back, or is it going to be Cucurella left wing-back and maybe Koulibaly as the left-sided centre-back? Too much uncertainty for me right now. And again, if we go to a back 4, we know Reece James is locked in that position. Who is it going to be between Cucurella and Chilwell? Too much uncertainty for me. Chris, hope we're doing well. Nick, when should I wildcard this first half of the season? I'm still happy with my team. Yeah, Nick, great point. If you haven't wildcarded already, first and foremost, unbelievable work. That is quality. Your team must be absolutely ridiculous. But I'm not jealous at all. What would I do? Game week 13 probably would be the time that I would look to wildcard. Now, the reason being is this. You won't be able to see this on screen, but the fixtures do swing in game week 13 until the World Cup in game week 16. And we do start to see, similar to what we had at the start of the season, the big teams have great fixtures. Liverpool, Nottingham Forest, Leeds, Spurs and Southampton, City, Brighton, Leicester, Fulham, Brentford. We've even got West Ham in there. We've got Spurs in there. We've even got Arsenal come back into some good fixtures. So my advice would probably be game week 13. It means that even if you wanted to lose some value, you could come off the Arsenal players, come off the Man City players for 1 week. Remember, team value is important in those players. And then wildcarded back in. So 13 would be my pick there. Poke to Guaita, Ward pick for Kepa or Neto. 2 free transfer, nothing to do. John, I wouldn't really rush to sell Pope personally. I think it's a bit of a luxury transfer. I understand that you want to use one of your free transfers there, but I wouldn't be selling Pope personally. Chris, James or Cancelo next 3 game weeks? I would go Reece James because Cancelo blanks in game week 12. Son or KDB for this week in isolation? It has to be KDB because he was rested in the Champions League and has a great home fixture against Southampton. Martinelli and Maddison for the next 3. It has to be Maddison because Martinelli blanks in game week 12. Ibrahim saying Mitrovic news. Based on the press conference, it sounds like he is going to be touch and go for game week 10, but available game week 11 if he doesn't play in game week 10. And that is enough of a reason for me to suggest to you guys to hold Mitrovic. Game week 10, 11, he plays against Bournemouth at home. Unbelievable fixture. And I do think that if you go sideways to another player, you're going to be looking at that fixture and the Villa fixture in game week 11, thinking just game week 12, thinking, oh, I should have kept Mitrovic. So I'm going to suggest people to keep Mitrovic based on the press conference that we saw. Maniv saying triple Aston Villa defence. Oh, I know they've been okay defensively recently, but I can never justify a triple defence in any team. So no, I will not be recommending that run 1 to you there. Dan, I don't know what that says, but you're basically saying Bowen in for Martinelli. And yes, I understand that could be a good move, but Martinelli against Trent could be a good opportunity there, a good matchup. I don't mind it, but again, you need the money. And would I upgrade Martinelli to Bowen? Probably not. Probably not. FPL A Plus is saying, how did Martinelli compare to these players in the midfielder comparison? So he is in reference to this screen here. So I can quickly cover off a little bit here. It's worth mentioning that, well, to be fair, actually, it's worth noting, I'm not really going to compare it because Martinelli doesn't play in game week 12. So his underlying stats, projected points aren't going to be looking the best going forward. But if I was to compare his per 90 so far this season, then Martinelli, expected FPL points per 90 is 5.45. So better than Diaz's, better than Bowen's, better than Maddison's. His expected goals is 0.32. So below Diaz, below Foden, below Zaha, but better than the other 2 that we mentioned. And his shots is 3.12. So his shot volume is fantastic, which is really worth noting. And 1.3 per 90 on target. So his numbers are looking good. But remember, he blanks in game week 12. There's a little bit of a worry there. KDB or Foden? Rodney, I think we've done a bit of discussion on that. So hopefully that helps and rewind it to the mid-price comparison there. My verdict was I think Foden could be a good alternative to KDB with the funds that he will free up for you. Rio, Nacho, will it be worth -4 to replace KDB and Bailey by... Rio, I really cannot recommend you selling KDB this game week. He's been rested completely in the Champions League. He has a home fixture against Southampton. I just cannot agree with that move. I touched on Foden being a bit more of a goal scorer in this Man City team, but you basically just giving the game 4 points means that you just got a mountain to climb with Foden and Zaha. And if I said to you right now, is Foden definitely going to score 4 points more than KDB? I don't think you can sit here and say it. Zaha, yes, he could score more than Bailey, but KDB on his own could just massively kind of wreck those transfers for you there. Thoughts on Sergio Gomez? Sim is saying, it's a really good point here. Sergio Gomez obviously hasn't had a Premier League minute so far, but with Kyle Walker's injury, we could see him being used from time to time up until the World Cup. Do I think he's an FPL option? No, I don't right now. Man City are blessed with so many centre-backs right now that they have the luxury to basically deploy them in fullback positions. And while I'm not saying they're better than Gomez in a left-back role, I do think that in times where Pep is going to fall back on his players that he can trust, we have seen Ake play as left-back. We've seen John Stones play as right-back. I know John Stones is injured right now, but these are just examples of players that could operate in those positions. Cancelo, this is good news for Cancelo because it means he will either play right or left-back depending on which route Pep goes. But because Gomez has played no Premier League minutes, I can't justify him as an FPL option right now. But it doesn't mean you can't put him on the watch list. Benny Blanco, please who can I replace Sinistera with? I already have Martinelli and 0.2 million in the bank. Okay, so just to remind ourselves, the price point of Sinistera, he is currently priced at 6.5 million. So you have 6.7 million available in the bank. So what I could do here is come over to the projected points. Again, you won't see this on your screen, but again, it is a really handy tool that we have over on fantasyfootballfix.com, and I really do recommend you guys checking out the links in the bio for all of the stuff on Fantasy Football Fix. Now, looking at the players for midfielders that you could consider, I think there's a few options that you could go for, and they come with different levels of caveats and pros and cons. So based on our projected points, Rashford is looking like the best alternative for you at 6.5 million, so he's a straight swap. Is projected to score 28.8 points, which is only 1 point less than Martinelli, and this is between now and the World Cup. So I think Rashford is probably the high ceiling, high risk, high reward pick. I say risk because I still think his minutes are a little bit of a worry because Antony, I think, is the number one in that right side of the three. I think Martial will get game time down the middle, and I think Sancho will play from time to time off the left. So I love Rashford as a pick if you want to go early on him. Trossard at Brighton, you can afford. He's projected to score 2 points less than Rashford over the same period. But off the back of that hat-trick and him playing as a forward alongside Welbeck under the new manager, I think Trossard is a wise move for you as well to go for. Other notable players, Harvey Barnes. Apologies, Harvey Barnes isn't. He is too pricey for you. Sorry, I forgot about the budget there available. So I think the wise move is either Rashford or Trossard. And it's going to come down to your appetite risk a little bit. Trossard is basically going to give you guaranteed minutes. And what I really do like about Trossard as well is that in game week 12, he has a fantastic home fixture against Nottingham Forest, which could be an alternative captaincy pick. So Trossard for the short term I like. Rashford from game week 14 or 13 I really like. So you could do maybe Trossard for the next three and then Rashford afterwards. That maybe is a route that you can consider there. Hopefully that did help you out. Okay, guys, we are going to come back to these. I do apologise. I'm just going to whack on the screen our projected points for game week 10. I'm conscious we've been going for 55 minutes, so I'm going to get those on the screen now. Okay, guys, so, I'm going to leave this on screen for you guys to kind of just like digest the information here because I'm kind of just going to be repeating what is currently on the screen right now. But just to kind of like do a quick overglance, if you were considering going against Haaland, just look at those projected points. 9.7 projected points is absolutely ridiculous. So I think Haaland is just the permanent captain here. De Bruyne looking like a great option as well. And as I mentioned, money no object, De Bruyne is still the pick to go for. But Foden I still think is a great alternative. But you can see for this game week in isolation, De Bruyne is looking like a brilliant move. Reece James looking great in the defensive department. Fabianski as well. We touched on West Ham's underlying defensive numbers. They are still really, really solid. And I wouldn't go by anybody if they want to go for a West Ham defensive option. In particular this game week. But I'm going to leave that on screen for you guys because it kind of explains itself what it is there. And if you have any questions on it, please do let me know in the chat. But I'm conscious I have a lot of questions here that I haven't gotten through. And I want to try and wrap this up in the next 10 minutes. So I'll try and answer all the questions in the chat. As always, if you haven't already, guys, please do drop a like on the live stream. You guys are absolutely teasing me, leaving me on 43 likes. What is this about? Get us another 7 likes, guys. It'll be massively appreciated. Come on now. It's what everybody would like. No, I'm joking, guys. But obviously, if you are enjoying the stream, please do drop a like. So let's get into some of the questions here. Foden's a Zaha for game week 11. I think there's potential for that in game week 11. But again, I don't like scheduling transfers in because basically so much can happen in FPL that your plans could just become basically redundant in a game week. Sam was saying Skamaka or Justin, who's benched? Look, I think if you have Skamaka, you play Skamaka, I think. Nigel, what about KDB? I've covered that one off. Yaya Arsenal, KDB and Andreas, or Foden and Bowen. It's going to be all about your squad structure, but I probably would go for Foden and Bowen just because you're getting two very good mid-price midfielders there. Andreas isn't really ticking over, and as I touched on, although I think KDB will outscore Phil Foden, I think the money that it saves you, Foden plus Bowen outscores KDB plus Andreas. That's the way I'm viewing it right there. Martinelli to Bowen and funded by Pope to Gaita, worth it for a -4. I'm not big on that. No, I'm not big on that for a -4. It's worth noting, Crystal Palace defensively, the underlying numbers are like mid-table. I know they've had really tricky fixtures and we might see an improvement in the underlying numbers. But, you know, I'm still not hugely bullish on Crystal Palace defensively. They just have good picks at cheap prices. Foden plays the second striker with Haaland as Grealish has found form. Yeah, exactly what I was discussing there earlier on. I think Foden is almost being deployed as a second forward in certain phases of the game, so it's great to see. Ezo saying Perisic slash... God, my chair went down then. I think I've had a few too many pies. Hang on, give me a sec. Jesus. Christ. You know it's a live stream of things that happen. Bloody hell. Right. Perisic slash Bailey to Zaha and Guy. Yes, I do like that if you can facilitate that move. Bailey, Saha and Mitrovic to Maddison, Zaha and Wilson for a -8. Oh, I don't like it for a -8. You're absolutely going to get the returns in this week. It's worth noting. So, look, if you're after the short-term returns, you're absolutely going to get it in this game week. Like, Maddison, Zaha and Wilson will bang against that. But then you have to take the -8 off it, and then I think it gets close. So I like it, but I just hate -8. So it's all about what kind of manager you are. I'm a very risk-averse manager. Covered that off. Covered the Sergio Gomez. Best 4.5 to 4.3 defender, please help. Ragnar, I think the answer there is going to be, I think Guy is a good option for game week for your team. And importantly, in game week 12, he has a very good fixture at home. So that blank game week is quite important to target for your squads. Fingan saying game week 10 or 11 or 12 or 13 better to wildcard. I plan to wildcard on game week 12. Your problem with game week 12 wildcard is that Man City and Arsenal blank. So you're basically going to be wildcarding either without any assets or all of them and benching them and maybe having 10 players. My advice would be to wildcard in game week 13 off the back of the blank. Means that if you wanted to and you're happy to lose a bit of value, sell the Man City or Arsenal asset, go for a 1 week punt and then wildcard them back in game week 13. Covered that off. George 100 saying best sub 4.5 million defender apart from Guy, which is a really good point here because of course some managers already got Guy. And based on our algorithm over the game weeks up until the World Cup, if we get rid of Crystal Palace, I don't think you want to go for a double Crystal Palace defence. And it's worth noting Anderson, Mitchell and Guy come out on top here. Zuma's looking good, and I really can get behind that. We need to forget the personal issues of Zuma. Obviously, we don't actually like the guy physically, but Zuma, as I said, West Ham defensively are looking good from an underlying numbers department. So I could get behind a West Ham asset in someone like Zuma. Finger saying, why isn't anyone choosing Rare as goalkeeper? I've seen people go for him. I think he's a solid pick. He has good, his save numbers are good, which means that he can accumulate monster hauls from time to time. Kepa is better ball playing than Mendy. Mendy is slightly better. Yep, cover that one. Neil, great point there. And again, guys, thank you for getting us over 50 likes. That hasn't gone under the radar. I can always trust you guys. Thank you. Jackie is saying, sell Martinelli for Maddison. Look, I think over the next 5 game weeks, it pays dividends for you. But you're just losing value in Martinelli. So I think once you sell him, you don't go back to him. That's the only thing I would say. But I like it. I don't mind it. Anthony or Zaha? Absolutely Wilfred Zaha. No questions asked. Webster, and Tom's making a really good point. Webster against Forest for that game week 12 fixture is a really good pick as well. Answering George's discussion there. Chinese is saying, would you start Mitrovic or bench him in game week 10? So my thoughts right now, Mitrovic, unless we get more information, is to start him because I think he either starts or he doesn't get any minutes. Obviously, some other people might be at a different kind of thought process. And if you do think that he might come off for a 10-minute cameo appearance at the end, then I think you bench him. But for me, I just don't see the point in risking him coming off the bench when they have a really kind of must-win fixture against Bournemouth in game week 11. So for me, I think that starting Mitrovic is the right move because you're either going to get him starting from the off or no minutes. Next 4 after West Ham for Mitro are all good. Yeah, exactly that. You're just going to want Mitrovic back in your team. Start Pickford or Ward. Wow, who would have thought we would have Ward in our discussion? But of course, the God got an 8-pointer. Ward is away against Bournemouth and Everton are at home to Man United. So based on the fixtures, I think naturally Ward is going to be my choice for you there. But Pickford is worth noting. Everton defensively are a much better team. The combination and spine of the team of Cody and Tarkowski with Onana, Idrissa Gueye and Iwobi is really, really solid and good from a defensive perspective. So what I'm seeing right now is I think Ward is one of those where he's going to get you a 6-pointer or a 2-pointer. And I think Pickford's either going to get you a 2-pointer or like a, 10-pointer, like a monster haul. And I think if you want to chase it, you go Pickford and you just back them to do a job against Man United. Covered a lot of that. Intellectual honesty, what a great name. Touch and go for Mitrovic this game week. Would you bench him or start? Okay, I've covered that one off. Hopefully that helped you out there. Transfer Tony to Wilson, Mitro and Haaland. I don't know what that means, Alex. Transfer Tony to Wilson. I like it. I like Wilson. Plus Mitro and Haaland. Oh, so you've got Mitrovic and Haaland. I think Tony to Wilson's quite a luxury move, I'm going to say to you. So would you roll in your free transfer, give you more flexibility for the following game week? I just think it's a little bit, I don't know. I think Wilson probably does outscore Tony this game week. It's just worth noting for game week 10 in isolation, we have Wilson to score 4.3 points and Tony to score 4.1. So it's just whether you think Wilson's a player you want to hold longer term. If it is, I can get by the move. Otherwise, for this game week in isolation, I'm not huge on it. I need a Leicester defence. Who's best? Rami, I think Justin is probably the route I would go for if I was picking a Leicester defender. Perisic, Bailey to Zaha and Agayi. Yes, I agree with both of those moves. Body by Duff saying, get the likes in, peeps. Yes, I do appreciate that. Thank you. Ram, Cancelo to Palace defender. No, I would not be doing that for this game week. At home to Southampton could be an absolute monster haul for Cancelo. Do not do it. Boma's saying, sell KDB to buy Foden and Zaha. Please advise. I wouldn't be doing that this game week. I just think KDB could be in for an absolute monster haul. We know he is an absolute beast at home. Just an absolute machine. Rested, didn't get any minutes in the Champions League. For me, I think you are... I just think you're really chasing the game if you're trying to sell KDB for this game week. I just can't advise anybody doing it. Francis, I have TA, Trippier, James, Guy and Justin. Who do I start? Well, it depends on what formation you're going for. If you're going for a 3, then I think you have to start Trippier and James, and you have to start Trent. I personally am at the sort of mindset where I just cannot come to a situation where I pay 7.4 million for a defender and I don't start him. If you pay 7.4 million for a defender, part of the contract on that, and every FPL manager should sign this contract, is you have to start him in every game. Because you saw the game against Rangers in the Champions League. He could play terribly and bang in a 30-yard free kick, and you're sat there thinking, crap, I knew this could happen. So, look, you pay for what you're getting. You're going to potentially start Guy, who gets kind of no goals, and Justin in a Leicester team who are pretty defensively leaky themselves, and not playing someone like Trippier, who has such potential for avenues of points. So I just can't get behind bench and Trent. Alex, considering your team, would you do Trent and Solanke to Trippier and Wilson if it only cost you just one free transfer? Well, I think that would cost you 2 free transfers, wouldn't it? So are you saying it would cost you 2 free transfers and no points hits? Obviously, if it incurs a points hit, I absolutely wouldn't do it. Would I do that? I like it. I don't mind that move. But then you have to remember that the following game week, in game week 11, you're going to have 2 Newcastle assets against Man United. Okay, if that's fine with you, cool. Game week 12, you'll have them against Everton. That's great. But you would have had Salah against West Ham. And then the game after that, you're against Spurs with double Newcastle, but you could have had Mo Salah against Nottingham Forest. So just maybe look over the next 4 rather than 1 game week, and then you might come to a better, not a better conclusion, but a more rounded conclusion. Boma, I think I answered your question, buddy. Sell KDB to buy Zaha or Foden? I wouldn't. I just cannot get behind selling KDB for this game week. Geordie's saying take Martinelli out for Zaha or roll. I would. Oh, bloody hell, that's a shout. What would I do there? It's all about your squad. If rolling the free transfer is going to open up other avenues in your team, I like the roll. But I can get behind the Zaha transfer this game week for Martinelli. Just because I think Martinelli blanking in game week 12 means that there's opportunities there for you to have multiple returns for Zaha. But yeah, it's tough for me to advise selling Martinelli as well. Right, guys. I think we're going to wrap it up there. I appreciate we've been on for about 1:10. So I think we've covered off a lot of the main talking points that we needed to discuss. Zim saying Kane, Andreas or Martinelli for Martial Foden. I don't really know how to answer that one, to be honest with you, Zim. Kane / Andreas or Martinelli for Martial Foden. Well, I'd definitely say sell Andreas over Martinelli. Ollie Watkins will return this game. We remember him. Yeah, Watkins is looking okay on the underlying stats. Not the underlying stats, on the projected points. Chris, can we talk about Diego Costa? We can talk about him, but I just want to see him get consistent game time. He's on the watch list, don't you worry. And it's inevitable the shithouse is going to score against Chelsea this game week. Bailey replacement might need surgery. Have KDB, Kane... Bailey replacements, I'm not big on. I think you just try and cash cow sell a cash cow and invest him up all the way into a mid-price midfielder. Right, guys, I'm going to have to wrap it up there. I do apologise. I am late for my tea. And sometimes time just catches up with you. So, thank you so much for tuning in, guys. It is massively appreciated. I hope you're enjoying these live streams. I think this has probably been one of our better ones, which has been really good. I think it's been a really solid live stream. Great engagement for you guys, which is always fantastic. And I think naturally we've come to some good conclusions with a lot of the hot topics. If you're watching it back, make sure you are dropping a like on the video. And as always, drop in the comments. Let us know what your thoughts are going forward. Help one another out. It's always part of the community here. So yeah, guys, we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you are new around here, make sure you do subscribe to the channel. You would have seen we are dropping daily content. Eddie's doing some fantastic work with the algorithm series. I'm doing some top transfer series, which is always great to watch as well if you are in a little bit of a deliberation about what to go for. And of course, these live streams are every Friday. So make sure you are sticking around for these. It's great to see some new faces in the chat, and it'd be great to see you guys back in the next live stream. So have a great game week, guys. Obviously, my last point is going to be Captain Haaland. Don't be a guy who captains Salah. And have a great evening wherever you are in the world. Take care, guys. I'll see you soon. Cheers.